Hey people, how's it going? Today I want to talk about a little manga called Berserk. It also has an anime, but let's not talk about that. So, this manga obviously is being discontinued, seeing as the creator, Mira, has died. However, I want to talk about it in a different context. Everyone likes to talk about it psychologically or talk about themes. What I want to talk about with Berserk, I want to talk about the esoteric undercurrents, the esoteric groundwork, the foundations of this manga. Talk about the esoteric, the occult concepts in it, and use those concepts to try and predict what would have happened in the future chapters. So, Berserk is an interesting manga, as we all know. An interesting series. It's also hard to pin down as a genre because it changes so much. It starts off as a kind of a dark fantasy, goes to like medieval period piece war, goes back to dark fantasy, and then turns into high fantasy. So it's actually changed over and over and over. However, through this change, it has revealed a certain cosmology. That in the world we have the physical world, but there's more to it than that. There are other worlds that sometimes cross over and merge. The best example, the first example we see of this, is the apostles. In the manga, these beings are basically twisted humans. Humans through great ego and suffering. Always suffering as well. It's almost like the ego has to be there, but it's the suffering is the force that then transmutes them into these monsters. These beings that can then exert their will onto the world. These beings are real demons. Are the real demons of Berserk, the antagonists, you could say. But there's more to it than that. There's also magic users. Magic takes place in the world of Berserk, or is revealed to be a facet of the world of Berserk. Magic is waning, but we still see magic users who can use elemental magic, summon the elements, or work with certain currents, or understand the mysteries of life and death. These magic users are still here. And through the magic users, we find this interesting concept of the daimon. Flora, Shirk's teacher, or Shirka's teacher, is said to have become a daimon. A daimon is different from a demon. In classical literature, the daimon were something that were above humans, that taught humans. It said there were, humans and gods, but there were things in between that, angels, archons, daimons. And it was kind of like a ladder between human, and then you move up to like daimon, and then angel, and then demigod, and god. And basically, the aim is, or the whole point is, the world itself is a kind of a womb. And within this womb are humans, which are seeds. And through working these seeds, you can then move up this ladder and ascend to the top to a state of godhood. So what is interesting is he starts off this series and he shows us the darkness. And he shows us that there's this underworld. And we think that's all there is. It's the generic, dark fantasy. But by mixing high fantasy into it, he opens up a second path. And he really shows that there are two paths. There's the path of the daimon and the path of the demon or the apostle. So you can either go down or up. And so we see this with these beings, the God Hand, the idea of evil. These concepts which he introduces and it makes it seem like it's a Lovecraftian horror. That's all there is, but that's seemingly not really what he's going for. What is actually happening is these things are in the lower worlds. The idea of evil is clearly the depth of creation, the very lowest sphere, where things, it's the condensation, everything that comes off of humans, fear, pride, vanity, lust, desires, unfulfilled desires, etc., etc. All of that sinks to the bottom of the abyss, the bottom of the cliff off, the very end point, and then it ushers up. It creates this idea of evil, which then moves upwards. And we have this upward motion then turning into the God Hand, which they are beings, but they are trapped in the astral world. And even though they have mighty powers, they cannot appear in the physical world unless they guise themselves in certain things, like in pestilence or as like organs. I think Sloan, what's her name? The female god hand member arises as a bunch of organs in one point, where they can only appear in the world for a short period of time during certain events or rituals or special moments, such as, i.e., the eclipse. So the eclipse is this crossing over of worlds, this mixing of worlds. This is the first time we see this mixing of worlds is at the end of the original anime, or in the manga it's the eclipse that turns our character, our boy, Griffith himself, into a member of the God Hand, or into an apostle. Because we see apostles created in the series, but Griffith is special. The astral opens up and he becomes a member of this ascended apostle group, this God Hand. So all of his ambitions, all of his dreams go into this thing, and he gives up his humanity. And this is one thing. So he to go the lower path, you have to give up your humanity. I mean, in a sense, you need to give up your humanity either way. If you want to go up or down, if you want to become a god, the human must die. The human must divinivize, or in this case, when you're going down, the humanity is cast away and you become a demon. You become this God Hand. And it's very interesting because he gives up his humanity to attain power, but he can't attain his dream now, really. The God Hand has actually deceived him, because as becoming a member of the God Hand, he gets sealed in the astral world. So to cross over, he needs to go through another ritual, another assumption. He actually merges somewhat with another being. He becomes a dual being, almost like a Hannes Musen, like what Gurdjieff would say. A dual being, and he merges with Moon Boy, which is something we've learned in just the most recent chapter. So Moon Boy is clearly it's almost like Griffith is the Moon Boy, or it's more like they're two different beings. Almost like Griffith and the Moon Boy have made a pact with one another. Like, Moon Boy is its own entity, and the pact has been like, oh, Griffith, you can live how you want in the world, but here's the pact. The pact is on the full moon, I take control. So the Moon Boy has actually given Griffith humanity again. He can actually feel, and that may get in the way later on. I mean, you could foresee a future where Guts, what would you say? He confronts the God Hand and fights and maybe kills a few, and then when it comes to Void, he is almost slain, but in the last moment, the humanity of Griffith, the Moonchild within Griffith, makes him act, and Griffith actually betrays the God Hand and kills Void. You could potentially see something like that happening. Now, talking about Guts himself, we've seen him go through several transformations. We've seen him use this armor, which brings out his inner shadow, which brings out his demon side. It's almost as if he's changing into an apostle, but not really. He's actually taking a kind of a middle path. He's not going into the astral, becoming a demon, and he's also not becoming a daemon. He's becoming something else, something perpetual that just moves through the world, a perpetual revenant to fight, much like what the Skull Knight has become. However, he's doing this unconsciously, and so like Carl Jung said, he's not integrating the shadow. What's really happening is the shadow's integrating him. However, as the series progresses, we have the character of Shirka coming in, and she's able to give him awareness, to pull him out of the shadow. It's almost like she is symbolically like his higher genius, his higher consciousness, that's helping him so he can use this power that perhaps could be definitely on par with an apostle, perhaps can even make him eventually on par with a member of the God Hand, and he can do it all while being awake. And this is what's interesting. Shirka's teacher became a daimon. She went up the higher path. However, in the chapter that's mentioned, it's mentioned that what? That, yeah, she's become a daimon, but who becomes daimons? It's mentioned that sorcerers can become daimons, but also heroes can become daimon. So we've seen Guts progress through this series. We've seen him, go from a boy through a wild child to someone who feels remorse, and finally someone who grows and matures, you could say Guts has has gained the true soul of a hero. So it could be that the end of the series has Guts ascending to, gaining this heroic soul, and through Shirka's teachings, through some kind of, and this is what's interesting, we have had the Eclipse, which is what the merging of the lower worlds with the physical, but what about an opposite, an eclipse, a reverse eclipse, something where the higher worlds are now a part of the physical? This is what happens in daemonhood. So you could see something like a reverse eclipse where the higher worlds open up and Guts becomes a daemon. Or perhaps this is the true ending of the series, is the God Hand may not be aiming for the physical world. The God Hand may be aiming for the higher worlds. They may actually be aiming for a final battle where both worlds open up at the same time, and the diamonds come from the higher regions, and the God Hand come with all the apostles from the lower regions. And there's this huge battle on Earth between gods and demons, between diamonds and apostles. And then this is the final battle where Guts confronts Griffith, and Skull Knight confronts Void, and there's betrayal, and is Moonchild going to have an effect on, Griffith? Or, that will be the big crescendo. You could potentially see this. That could be using occult knowledge to understand his cosmology. That could be what he was moving towards. Or I could be completely and utterly wrong. I don't know. What do you guys think? Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I want to know. But I think that's where the series was really heading, at this tiered kind of universe, and at this final crescendo and opposite eclipse. And perhaps at the end, Griffith will die, Void will die, Skull Knight will die. Perhaps Guts will ascend, and he'll finally find peace. And maybe on the physical world, things will be sealed off again, and humanity will go on as before, without any interference from any of these mystical realms. Maybe Casca will survive, and she'll become the new leader of the Band of the Hawk, or of the New Hawk. Who knows? Who knows? Well, we can only think and machinate now, but that's my take. That's my headcanon on how it's going to end. Okay? Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Please leave a like and subscribe.